Hey, this is Mike Wolfe from ClassicRockTheVault.com. I am excited because we are bringing you an interview with one of the best album designers ever, Mr. Kosh. How you doing today, Kosh?
Hey, man, doing very, very good. So glad to be here.
Well, thank you for taking some time out and spend with us here. To start off here a little bit, how about you give our listeners a little bit of background about yourself?
Oh, my God, it's a checkered background, I'm afraid. But I started out, believe this or not, at the Royal Opera. And that's where sort of a lot of rock stars would pop in to sort of make notes on how the sort of key changes on some of the sort of great operas were made so they could incorporate that in their music. And one thing led to another. And I was also working for a magazine called Art and Artists. And the editor of Art and Artists, which was a prestigious magazine, by the way, went to run the Venice Biennale Art Festival and left me in charge, which was a huge mistake. The next thing I know, I'm fielding phone calls from major artists, and then it's John Lennon's on the phone, sort of say, "Oh, come and see me." And I thought, I was I didn't know what was going on. I really thought maybe this was a joke from my friends. So I decided to go and see John, and sure enough, it was, and therefore I ended up in Apple. There you go.
Wow.
I'm 22 years old. I mean, come on.
So you basically grew up at the same time as the Beatles as they were coming up. So were you like John? Did you go through art school?
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's kind of funny in a way because like Ray and Dave Davis were at my art school before they formed the Kinks. That was and then Pink Floyd was at the Royal College. But yeah, it was amazing how this sort of the rock and roll scene. The British sort of invasion sort of spawned in art schools. I mean, John, I think, went to Liverpool Art School, didn't he? I can't remember which one.
Yeah, he was Liverpool Art School. Now, are you from London or where?
I'm a Londoner, yeah. East End Londoner, yeah.
Okay, so you were part of that whole scene in the 60s with all...
No, I didn't sort of join until the very late 60s.
Gotcha.
I mean, I was part and parcel of the fact that we all liked... the music and where we were going. I mean, our local band, of course, was the Rolling Stones and whatever else. And it wasn't until 1969 I sort of met John Lennon and then joined Apple Records.
Okay, well, bringing up John Lennon, that has to bring up what was the first rock album cover that you designed?
Well, it's kind of weird because I started out on Let It Be. Then all of a sudden, the Beatles got back, sort of became friends again. And made Abbey Road, which, in my opinion, is probably the best album they ever made. I mean, but don't forget that sort of Sgt. Pepper probably was the one that launched it all, as far as graphic design's concerned. Because the main competitors at the time were the Beach Boys and the Pet Sounds, which the Beatles were kind of really scared of, but their album covers were like awful. So I got launched into all of a sudden finding myself at Apple and working on Let It Be, which was going to be their swan song, until Abbey Road suddenly got switched into position. And there you go. I mean, it just opened all the doors in America for me, that one did.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, that's two iconic albums, and both album covers are just unbelievable. They've been parodied. They have been redone.
Oh, yes, I know. We've got so
times.
many parodies. I love them.
So you got a job working with Apple.
Yeah.
And did you get to work with some of the other artists that the Beatles were recording at the time?
Oh, yes, Mary Hopkin, Billy Preston, Badfinger. Yeah. It was a powerhouse. I mean, one of my big hobby horses is that, everyone thinks that it was all sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Though some of that was definitely included in it, but it was hard work. We would turn up in the morning, kind of late, I must admit, and work through the night, getting things right, So we were working on, I was working on John and Yoko's wedding album, I think probably the first things I was working on for them. And then I was doing Instant Karma. Oh, Christ. I mean, it was just so much stuff that was going through here. That we did, the Plastic Ono Band, of course, was sort of being launched at the point. So I was doing Cold Turkey, and then the sort of Ringo's. It was just like it was an immense sort of a powerhouse of very, very enjoyable work. There you go.
And I gotta say one thing: it's some of those albums are just the photography, the setup, they're fantastic for one, and two, it's like I've always sat there, looked at the album, and said, okay, how did you think about doing this, or why?
Well, it all depends how the brief came in. Some albums were serendipitous, and some albums are very, very carefully planned. And it all depends how much time you've got to sort of put things out. I think I had 3 days to get Abbey Road out. It's like.
Well, speaking of Abbey Road, when I checked out your Facebook page and a little bit about you, I found out you got in a little trouble with Abbey Road.
Yes, I did indeed, because I didn't think it was necessary to put the name of the Beatles on the cover, because, but if you don't know who the Beatles are by now, you must be living in a cave and didn't have a record player, so, yeah, I did get into a lot of trouble. And one night when the chairman of EMI sort of phoned me in the middle of the night with a string of invectives saying I just wrecked their album and never sell anything. And I'm very, very young, so I'm very scared. So when Sir Joseph Lockwood phones you with his very posh English accents and uses very, very rude language, it's 2:00 in the morning or thereabouts, you don't get any sleep. It wasn't until I went to Apple next day, very, very sheepishly, and said, "Well, fuck it with the Beatles," And they sold 26 million in 3 days or something,
Yes, I think you're...
I may be exaggerating, but you can check the figures.
Oh, yeah, I think it's one of their biggest selling albums. I think you were vindicated there a little bit.
Yes, I was, but you can imagine as a nervous youth, a callow youth, I was very, very, very worried about this,
Oh, I bet. It was figuring, especially as the first album that you're working on, you're working with, the band in the world.
Yeah, the biggest band in the world, which is why I thought we didn't need to put their name on it.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. But now
I did the same thing again with the Eagles in Hotel California. I thought, well, now these guys are the biggest band in the world. I don't have to put their name on it either. And it worked. It worked. So I pulled that trick twice.
Oh, hey, if it worked the first time, why not?
Why not? Yeah, I don't think I'm not going to do it again.
Well, all right, getting back to Abbey Road. Now, of course, we know the whole story about, the Paul is dead thing. And, how did it come about with what the guys were wearing and how they were lined up? And then put that into context with the whole Paul is dead.
Pictures, standing on a step ladder in the middle of the street at Abbey Road, and Paul kicked his sandals off. Because I believe I think he was wearing Converse sneakers and they were too tight. I don't know what the story was, but anyway, so they were supposed to march in step, and it was really intended to be nothing more than a publicity shot. But then the EMI phoned later on that day and said we need an album cover by Wednesday, and so we just got a light box out and we looked at the best pictures, and I saw that one, and I thought, well, this is the best one of them all. They're not in step. But all the other stuff was serendipitous. I mean, the fact that the Volkswagen license plate was 28, if that would have been meant that 28, if Paul had survived another year, it'd be 28. It was just like everything was just totally got out of control. And rumors were abounding, and all of a sudden I found myself in America with this album cover in my portfolio.
All right. Then after that, of course, you worked with, John and some of the other Beatles. And John, you seem to have worked a lot with him. Yes. He was a great man. I really loved him. And in fact, I'm speaking to you now. It's directly because of my influence. His dialogue influence with me is brilliant. His acerbic wit could be scaring, but on the other hand, he was incredibly bright. It just and he liked my work too, which was kind of cool. He would let me run with a few things, so that was good. Well, it's like I was surprised that not only did you do the some of the work for John, but you also were in charge of his campaign for The War Is Over. Yeah, that started out as just a Christmas card. It was the way that sort of exploded was pretty amazing. But we ended up with boats going around Manhattan, with War Is Over signs, and the biggest War Is Over sign ever made on Times Square. Then, of course, it's been eclipsed many times since then, but still, at the time, I think it was the largest one that had ever been built. So, they were heady times. And whose idea was it for the wedding album? Now, that was one that I did have in my collection for a while. And
did you have the wedding cake in it and everything?
Oh, yes, I had the piece of wedding cake and the the marriage certificate, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, well, it was. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it was like John and Yoko and I. I mean, it was. I decided to put the photo strips in there and a picture of the wedding cake, and it was their idea to put the wedding certificate in, which was pasted on the inside of the box, if I remember rightly.
Yep.
It was just one of those collaborative efforts where we were all sitting around in John's office, sort of like dreaming up ideas which would drive the printers crazy.
Speaking of driving the printers crazy, now you've also won 3 Grammys for your work with Linda Ronstadt. Yeah. And there was one album I saw you did that was a printer's nightmare.
Oh, wait a minute. There must have been was it the Lush Life box, or was it the one that was printed in metallic red? Oh, okay.
No, it was the box. We had to actually pull half of the cover off to get the album out.
Yeah, and then you can't get it back on again easily.
Yeah. I bet the printers loved you for that one.
Oh yeah.
Which that kind of reminded me there was another album, I don't know who did it, was Grand Funk's E Pluribus Unum, which was in a round thing. Yes,
I remember. And and there was also, there's been a load of those albums which have sort of been difficult sort of to justify. There was the Bee Gees one that was covered in red flock.
Yes, the felt, Odessa.
Every time you put the stylus on your record, it would gather all the red flock up and sort of skip right to the middle. There was Sticky Fingers, which with the
zipper.
The zipper.
Which ruined other albums, yes, I have that.
It actually ruined the first 2 tracks of the album. It was my idea to move the zipper up to the middle, so undo the fly and bring it to the middle of the record so it wouldn't damage stuff. Because I was working for Alan Klein at the time in New York. So
that was one of your albums also?
No. It was Andy
okay.
Warhol.
Okay.
I just saved the embarrassment of 500,000 of albums being sort of crushed to death by the zipper.
Okay, and then some of the other stuff that you have done, it's like, I found out when I was, again, reading your Facebook page, how big of a fan I am of your artwork, and I never knew who did all these things. You mentioned Hotel California.
Right.
Which is a great photo on the front of that.
Yes, I know, it's great, isn't it?
Yeah,
so it exactly sums up. Henley, what Don Henley wanted to sort of sum up I went to Irving Azos' office and listened to the title track, which was on an acetate, and it just blew me away. And so then it was like time now to sort of go out and try and find an image that sort of reflected those lyrics. So we shot 3 hotels. And not only did we just shoot them, but we produced 3 complete full-size mock-ups, which were very expensive at the time, because no computers in those days, right? So we were actually doing prints and putting lettering on them and doing everything else, and then presented them to the band. And of course, the one with the Hotel California that we see now with the sunset just came romping home. It was just obvious right from the start, So that was a premeditated. See, that wasn't a sort of spontaneous cover. That was definitely crafted, really crafted.
Okay, now are you also responsible for the picture on the inside cover of Hotel California?
Yeah, absolutely. We sort of with David Alexander and I sort of blocked everything out. So there's the group of friends. They're all friends of ours or associates. I think you find there's Peter Asher in there and his wife in there, and there's the band and their wives and girlfriends and whatever else. David Alexander spent so much time lighting that and getting it right. I think we took probably about 9 hours to get that photograph right. So by the time everyone arrived, we can go smash, 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 go, it was shot at the Lido, which was a flop house on Wilcox, if you know LA very well. But we converted it into the luxury hotel we wanted. So complete with the plastic sort of palm trees and the Rastafarian who was hiding up in the corner, which we didn't even see until we got the prints back.
I was going to ask you about that. Who was up on the balcony hiding?
We don't know. He was a friendly spirit, at least, that's for sure. Because you get people to sign releases for everything, but we didn't even know he was up there until we saw the print. There he was. So we did sort of make a sort of effort to try to find him, but I just don't know. It was just magic.
Because that was one of those things. A friend of mine years ago showed that to me in the album cover. I'm like, well, that's interesting. They've got somebody up there, and nobody seems to know anything about it.
No idea. We had no idea until actually we blew up the die transfers to huge sizes so we could retouch them and look at them. And like, wait a minute, who's that? We had no idea.
Interesting.
Isn't that great? Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, and it also goes back. One of my favorite album covers of all time was a New World Record from ELO.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
I mean, that when I first saw the album, because I'm an ELO fan, and when I got the album, I saw the logo, and I'm like, that is just awesome artwork.
Well, there is a story behind that logo, and the logo is, you see, my dad used to work for Wurlitzer. So if you look at that logo carefully, you can see that's the top of a 1015 Wurlitzer jukebox, which are reversed and sort of, they used to have those speakers that used to go out with those jukeboxes that kind of it's circular. So I took that, and I also took the General Electric logo and turned that into the ELO logo and put that in the middle. And I was actually flying from London to LA, and they go over the pole at the time. And we were awakened by the pilot to say, look out to the right-hand side of your plane, and you'll see the Aurora Borealis. And I'd never seen anything like it. It looked like Disney had sort of spray-mounted stuff in the sky. So I was totally blown away, and by the time I landed, I decided to incorporate that into the logo. So that's why those funny little color things are going around.
Gotcha. That is interesting. And then, of course, the ELO connection goes on to their next album, Out of the Blue.
Yeah, right.
And I know you have a little story about that. How'd you come up with the spaceship?
The reason that actually happened was we used to make stickers in those days. It used to go on albums and things, and I had an ELO sticker, my logo sticker, and I stuck it on a Frisbee because it kind of looked good. And I threw it to my son, and because he was like 7 years old or whatever, and as it's flying through the sky, I think, oops, I think we got an album cover. And that's how Out of the Blue came about.
And then, of course, you use that, on as part of their logo, the theme for a few albums. And they actually made one of their tours, the stage was the spaceship.
Yes, right, which I had nothing to do with that, by the way. But still, nonetheless, it was kind of like, it was a good stroke.
Well, it was part of your inspiration.
It like, Eagles, Hotel California went on stage with Hotel California, which was a big thrill. You can imagine seeing that at the Forum.
Now, did you ever get a chance to, with all these guys you've worked with, did you ever get a chance to sit in the studio with them while they were recording?
Yeah. I mean, I was quite often I was there. I've been in the studio for the Ballad of John and Yoko, by the way, when John and Paul were not supposed to be speaking to each other. But they had, a contractual obligation with EMI to do another single. So I walk into Abbey Road, and there's John on rhythm, and there's Paul on drums, because the rest, George and Paul, Ringo were somewhere else. I've been there with REO Speedwagon. I've been there with, oh my God, I've done a lot. And it always helps, to get in, to hear rough mixes, even if they're just like playbacks in the studio. It really helps to, just to sort of try and get the feeling. I give you a good example actually, though, was I was upstairs at Apple Records in Derek Taylor's office. He was the great promotional publicist, artist, and a very, very sweet man. When John Lennon walked in with a acetate of Abbey Road, it's come from the basement where Jeff Emmerich was cutting it, and put it on the turntable. And there's like 9 of us in this room, and we're the first people ever to hear Abbey Road. Can you imagine?
I'd love to. I mean, that's one. I mean, I'm one of those. I grew up. I was
still shaking.
I bet. I mean, I grew up with the Beatles. I've seen Ringo live. I was lucky enough to see Paul once, and it was just a thrill. And I couldn't imagine what it would be like to actually work with these guys.
Well, they were great. They were cool cats, because you go into the building into 3 Savile Row, and there literally will be Beatles running up and down the stairs because they didn't trust the elevator. And the apple scruffs outside, where the group is, they'd be sent off to Paris to become cordon bleu so they can come back and make great sandwiches for everybody.
Nice. I'll tell you that.
So it was heady times, man. I got to tell you.
Oh, I gotta say, you're one lucky individual.
Oh boy, believe me, I just fell into it. So it was. Yeah, I didn't realize what I was doing at the time. It's only when you look back on it you realize that, oh my God, what was I doing?
Well, it's like I'm one of those. I'm a nutcase, I guess, because I'm a musician. I'm in radio. I'm a record collector, and some of the things I look for, I'm dumb enough. When I get an album, I read the cover, and I've had my chops busted many times for doing that. And some of the information you find, it's like you look at Abbey Road, and one of the engineers on there was some guy named Alan Parsons.
Yes, right. Yeah.
And you're like, wait, is this the same guy that's part of the Alan Parsons project?
Yeah.
And you start stringing this stuff together.
Together, right? Yeah. And then Jeff Emmerich's kind of stringing the whole thing together, and but when you get to sort of Let It Be, and then you get all that sort of weird stuff going on because they're recording on the roof and sort of piping it down to the basement, and then Phil Spector comes and messes with it, and then Paul gets upset. It's just like, oh dear. There was an awful lot of sort of stuff going on at the time, which, as I say, as a callow youth, it was just like, oh my God, this is like there's a swirling around my head all the time. So.
Well, out of all the artists you've got to work with, I have to ask this: who was your favorite?
God, it has to be Linda. It has to be Linda Ronstadt. She's still a pal.
I mean, great.
She's the sweetest of all, and she let me do what I want to do, and she's so appreciative of what I do. And I could, we stay in contact. I just did her biography. I just signed the whole book for her, and we just did her duets album, where she's singing with Frank Sinatra and whatever else. And I got a feeling that I can only, But then again, there are so many artists I do love working with. I mean, Jimmy Buffett is a delight. Absolute delight. I've done so many albums with Jimmy, and we just went vinyl with his last album, which was a big thrill for me. I had to dig out all my old templates, like from 1980 something, to do a sort of vinyl album. But he's great. I don't know. There's many people that I really enjoyed working with. So going from there all the way back to sort of, to heavy metal, Blackie Lawless of Wasp is a dear friend, and we have a lot of fun. And when we were doing our sort of documentaries for the History Channel, he actually came and scored the music for us, and it was like dynamite. It was great. He played it, and it's just cool, So, Dan Fogelberg was dear, very, very dear. In fact, I'm working on a tribute for him now with... I don't know when we're going to get it out, but we're doing it. Everyone's recording. The Eagles are recording. People are recording. And Jean Fogelberg is, very, very sweet. And we're in touch with her. So, we keep in touch with, we have fun. You got to have fun, man. That's the whole point, isn't it?
Oh, exactly. Now, out of all the album covers that you have done, what is your favorite?
Oh, dear. How am I going to put this? It's got to be Simple. I think it has to be Simple Dreams. I got a Grammy for it, but I just think maybe that was the one that we put so much. But how can I say this? Because Hotel California had so much put into it. Hotel California came in at number 6, didn't it? Of the Rolling Stones top 100 album covers. It never got nominated for a Grammy because that's probably my fault because I didn't think of it at the time. So it's somewhere between Hotel California and Linda Ronstadt's Simple Dreams, I think. Abbey Road's the most iconic, of course, but that was a serendipitous sort of rush job, which has turned into something which we never expected. As far as the cover's concerned, obviously the album was a different thing altogether.
Well, put it this way: there are people today that still cross Abbey Road and
I know it's a national monument now in London. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, they've declared it a national monument, though I think they've cheated because there was a sewer problem. They had to dig it up and then put it back down again, so it's not quite the same place.
Yeah, but the idea...
People still walk across it, and I think... And there's so many parodies of it. I've got a collection of parodies. They're funny. I've got the oh, my God. How many people? I mean, I know we got 100 at least parodies of that.
Oh, I know. They even have a camera on there that's online 24 hours a day that you can
Oh, well,
watch
really? I
people
didn't
cross
know
it.
that. Oh my God! Yeah.
Where else do we find that at?
And
And
we had the Chili Peppers walking across stark naked, except they had sort of socks on their cocks. Remember that one?
Yep.
You know, we've had National Lampoon, we've had everybody.
and you started it. It's your fault.
Well, yeah, and of course, this, when England got sort of thrown out of the football thing a couple of months ago, they actually got the English football team walking across Abbey Road. So I thought that was funny. So Abbey Road all of a sudden represents the whole of Britain, which I think is, oh really, not the Queen, not the Houses of Parliament.
Yeah, Abbey Road.
A pedestrian crossing.
And you started it. It was your idea, your fault. You're to blame.
But I didn't actually start it. It just sort of took off. And I carried the ball from that point on.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, it was a great idea because, like you said, when people start to imitate it, you know you've made it.
Yeah, well, true. Yeah, it did actually open the doors in America for me. There's no doubt about it.
So you're keeping busy now, still working in the industry.
Yep, we're still doing stuff. We're making documentaries. We're sort of out there doing, pitching and working on stuff. And, I'm doing the Beatle Fest in a couple of weeks to expound and all that sort of stuff. And we're doing, I'm doing big prints now of some of my art, some of the art from the heyday, as it were. So I'm having fun with those. And I'm doing, believe it or not, now I've discovered a process where you can actually look at your art and it looks great. And then you put 3D glasses on and it all changes. So you just have to keep working, man. You can't stop.
Oh, that's it. And I did read one thing that I thought was really funny, and that was when I read that you were complaining about CD covers compared to album covers because of the size.
Oh, well, yeah. Soon it's going to be just a tooth implant, isn't it? I don't know. Yeah, because now you used to have the great art gallery in the sky. You could walk down the street to Tower Records and then you look up and there's like 10 album covers up there that, you designed out of the 100 of that year, of that month, and it's like, oh my God. So they get great art gallery, in fact. Now those days are gone because people download now and it's low resolution. So, never mind, progress is progress.
Personally, I still prefer vinyl over CDs, and I like my albums.
I got turntables, I got the old tube amplifiers, I got everything, So I wallow in my nostalgia.
Yeah. And you also have all the old original prints, even the ones that weren't used.
Yes. Yeah, I've got a lot of stuff that got rejected. Don't tell anyone.
Well, I think the key to photography is, I heard it somewhere that somebody said you take 200 shots to get that one.
Well, yeah, because I wasn't actually the photographer when I was the art director, so I would be responsible for going through, reams and reams and reams and photographs and sort of taking them to the band and, sort of saying, well, no, I can fix your nose. If you don't like your eyebrows, I can deal with it. Don't worry about it, stuff like this. But it was, they'd have motorized drives and it'd be, these things would be like firing away constantly. But nowadays, of course, with digital drives, I mean, you can take 1,000 pictures, and in some respects, it makes it more difficult in that. But when it comes to designing, it makes it more easy now because you can spending a whole night trying to work on something that doesn't work. Now you can do 10 different variations in half the time and find out what you need to do. So the innovations are actually quite staggering. As soon as Macintosh came along, it was a revolution. It really was.
Now, do you prefer working in the computer medium or the old photography film medium?
Well, no, I have to work in the digital medium, because we are mapped out, and these things are so fast and they're so good. You can reject stuff that you don't like almost immediately and keep going, as opposed to sort of wait for it to be developed and see what happens, and then decide it's not quite right, So I think the Macs have just totally revolutionized the business, and we have a lot of fun with them too. So anyway, I don't know. It's just it's all different, but it's still exciting. That's the point.
Okay, we're going to be getting some posters here to give away to our listeners.
Oh yeah, right.
Could you explain to our listeners exactly what the posters consist of.
Well, yeah, it's a sort of compilation of some of my best work. From Who's Next to Let It Be to 10,000 Maniacs to ELO to The Who to Bob Dylan to Rod Stewart, to stuff. And it's designed by myself.
Cool. My producer here, Bob, just had a question for you. He wants to know, what were some of your favorite songs?
Oh, my God. Oh, Christ. This is difficult because there's so much rock and roll that I really enjoyed and loved. Anything on Abbey Road works. You look at Let It Be, Don't Let Me Down, probably because of the Roof concert, which I was there, was probably just the most thrilling. But then, it's like country rock. The Eagles, for Christ's sake, Hotel California. When I first heard that, I had shivers, It's very difficult for me to answer that question. It's like saying, what's my favorite Mozart? And I'm going to say, okay, well, what's your favorite Vivaldi? Because I think all music is all part and parcel of a great heritage of hard work. Whether it's blues, rock and roll, classical, whatever, you just have to enjoy the moment. I mean, I know some of the things which, I'm not crazy on, but I'm not going to mention those.
Bob's a race nut. He likes little MGs. So I guess
boy,
he wants to know what kind of cars you like.
Oh, well, Coopers, Mini Coopers. I used to drive and race Mini Coopers. In fact, we have a Mini now. Susan and I have a Mini, which is delightful to drive. I came up with all those with MGs and what big cars. When I first came to the States, the first thing I did was get the biggest car I could possibly find. Having lived in my life in England driving tiny cars, so I got I think it was a Lincoln Capri, which was like 54 feet long or something, or whatever else. But it was like it had one of those V8s which you could take up to 140 miles an hour in no time. Then I had the big Hudson Hornets. And then we went with the Buick Specials. Everything for the 50s I suddenly decided to collect. And I had a garage full and had to get rid of them because it was ridiculous.
Well, you mentioned the magic word in there for Bob here was racing. You used to race?
Yes. Yep. I used to poke those things. Actually, when I was at art school, we built a little up-frame Lotus. And I took that round Brands Hatch and lost a wheel. Luckily, it was a rear wheel. No, it was, otherwise I'd have been dead.
Bob, he races in a SCCA series road course, and for years he raced a little MG, and he always used to have fun with that thing.
Yeah, those little 4-cylinders, they were just hot, and a little sweet little gearbox, sweet. So listen, my manager will be very upset with me if I don't mention my new line of artwork.
Well,
which
go
will be
right
up
ahead.
and coming soon, so I have to get you some images of that so you can see what I'm doing.
Awesome. Well,
because we have to pay the mortgage,
Of course. You go ahead and do that. We'll make sure we throw some of those pictures up on our Facebook page.
Oh, great. That'd be terrific. Thank you. Yeah, because they're actually looking kind of good. I've done one on T-Rex, which I think Mark Bolam's a dear friend of mine, so it's about time I paid homage to the man I really loved and couldn't go to his funeral because it upset me so much. So.
Yeah, it's a shame. He was one that died way too soon.
Oh, boy. Yeah, he was a nice man, too. We had a lot of fun together.
Great musician and just underrated.
Yeah. And as I say, I just suddenly now, after how many years, decided to pay a little homage to the old man because, he was such a cool cat.
Well, he was one of the first ones that started the glitter rock scene,
Oh,
too.
yeah, the glitter and glam and all that stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, and he knew what he was doing, too, because he thought it was a joke right from the start, because he was a consummate musician, But the whole point was he realized that he grabbed something and was going to make the most of it. But he never took it seriously. He never took himself seriously. He was just really, really down to earth. He was an East London kid like me,
I saw a video years ago of T-Rex doing Bang a Gong on one of those British shows, and I was surprised that the keyboard player was some guy named Elton John.
Yes, exactly.
Now, have you ever done any artwork on cars?
No, not really. I did paint some flames on my Lotus that we did at art school. I've done nothing else, no. Apart from the fact, I have just actually reflected the whole of the Hotel California image on a 1961 Pontiac, all in the chrome and the side of the body, just as a piece of art.
Cool.
But it's not actually on the car; it's all Photoshop work.
Ah, gotcha.
I'm going to send you that because it's actually one of my best pieces.
Oh, neat. I appreciate that. All right, so what are you up to right now that you're pushing, you're promoting?
Well, I mean, mostly our prints and the fact that, that's basically what we're doing. We're going into a line of prints and working on sort of how we can sort of get some of the great images that haven't been seen for a while back into circulation again and have as much fun doing it. And we're doing sizzle reels. Actually, we're doing a sizzle reel now because it's the 25th anniversary of the Berlin Wall coming down. So what we're trying to do is get a sizzle reel together to sort of work out how we can persuade people that it was rock and roll that helped bring down the wall. I mean, it means Joe Cocker, it means David Bowie, it means Springsteen, all the people that actually were playing on the west side of the wall, and the music spilled over to the east side of the wall and caused the riots, and then eventually the Western rock and rollers, particularly the working class, such as Springsteen and Cocker, were allowed to come into East Berlin to play, and that just made the situation worse for the East Berlin, for the Soviets, and it helped to bring the wall down. And that's a documentary we're working on right now.
That sounds interesting.
Yes, it is good actually. Yes, it says the music's kind of expensive, so we've got to work that one out. Okay, I'm talking to Irving Azoff and people like this to sort of work something out.
If our listeners were interested in getting some of these prints, they wanted to buy them. How would they get a hold of you to get that?
Yeah, we've got to get back to you on that because we've got a website we're building right now.
Okay, so as soon as your website's done, you let us know and we'll post it.
The website's supposed to come out like last month, but didn't. So we're still working on that, make sure it looks pretty and all that stuff. Because it's pretty, I mean, some of them are big, some of them, it all depends so we're just working out sizes and stuff like this, and how beautiful the prints are going to look. They have to be perfect. Because some of them are going to be on aluminum, so they're going to be really gleaming.
Cool. Hey, Bob, I think we need to save some money to buy one of those for the studio, man.
Yeah, well, we'll work something out. Don't worry.
I appreciate it. For me, it's been a big thrill to talk to you because, I mean, this is like...
Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you very much for your time and coming on the air with us.
Well, that was a great gig. Thank you very much.
ClassicRockTheVault.com. This is Mike Wolfe. I want to thank everybody for listening. Great interview there with Kosh. And keep listening because we have autographed posters by Kosh that we're going to be giving away. So listen for more details on how you can get one of these pieces of artwork for yourself right here on ClassicRockTheVault.com.